At 7:18 Monday morning, the first truck rolled into Ashbury. The town should have been awake. Coffee shops, morning traffic, dog walkers. Instead, there was nothing. The traffic lights still changed. Red, yellow, green, over and over, but no cars waited beneath them. David Collins slowed his utility truck to a stop. He looked through the windshield. Empty streets, empty sidewalks, not abandoned, just empty. He checked the work order. Power outage. North Ashbury, nothing unusual. He picked up his radio. Dispatch? Only static answered. David stepped out of the truck. The air felt strangely still. Not silent. He could hear birds. Wind moving through trees. A lawn sprinkler ticking somewhere nearby. The town sounded alive. It just didn't have any people in it. He walked toward the nearest coffee shop. The open sign glowed brightly. Inside, fresh coffee still steamed in paper cups. One cup sat on a table, half full. A newspaper lay beside it, today's date, the crossword half completed, the chair pushed back, as though someone had stood up and never returned. David looked behind the counter. The espresso machine was still running. A muffin sat inside the oven, burned black. Its timer continued flashing. 8 of 3, 8 of 3, 8 of 3. The clock above the counter had stopped. 10:13. David frowned. His phone had no service, no emergency alerts, nothing. He stepped back outside. Across the street, a dog wandered slowly through the intersection. Its leash dragged behind it. The dog stopped, looked at David, then walked toward a yellow house. The front door stood wide open. David followed. Inside, breakfast still covered the kitchen table. 2 bowls, milk beginning to spoil, toast untouched. The television played cartoons. Nobody watched them. A family photograph stood on the counter. 4 people smiling. David turned toward the hallway. Every bedroom had been slept in, phones charging, wallets, purses, keys. Everything people usually took with them still inside, except their shoes. Every pair was missing. David froze. Not one pair remained in the house. He whispered to himself, why would everyone leave barefoot? Then he realized they hadn't. The shoes were missing. Not the socks. Not the coats. Only the shoes. He backed toward the front door. Outside, the dog was gone. In its place, fresh muddy footprints crossed the porch. One set, leading away from the house, none leading toward it. David followed them. They continued down the sidewalk, past parked cars, past bicycles lying in driveways, past a playground where swings moved gently in the breeze. No children, no parents, only empty swings. Then the footprint stopped. Not faded, stopped. As though the person wearing the shoes had simply ceased to exist. David stared at the pavement. His radio crackled. He grabbed it immediately. Unit 7. Static. Respond. Then silence. The voice hadn't sounded like dispatch. It sounded frightened. David climbed back into his truck. The engine started immediately. He drove toward the police station. The front doors were unlocked. Inside, computers still glowed. Coffee mugs sat beside keyboards. A half-written report remained open on one screen. He read the last sentence. Residents are gathering near. The sentence ended there. No period. No explanation. A police radio repeated one message over and over. Officer Taylor. 5 seconds of static. Officer Taylor. Again. 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 Shut it off? The silence felt worse. He walked into the holding cells. Every door stood open. Every cell was empty. One chair had been knocked over. On the floor beneath it, a single muddy shoe. The first shoe he had seen all morning. He picked it up. The sole was completely clean. Only the outside was covered in mud, as if someone had stepped into the mud after taking the shoe off. David slowly placed it back on the floor. Something wasn't making sense. Then he noticed a map hanging on the wall. Someone had circled one location in red marker. Oak Street, house 214. He drove there. The neighborhood looked exactly like the rest of town. Silent? Still. But one thing immediately stood out. House 214 had its porch light on. In broad daylight, the only light anywhere in town. David walked toward it. The front door wasn't open. It wasn't locked either. He stepped inside. The house felt warm. Dinner cooked on the stove. A record player quietly played jazz music. The grandfather clock ticked steadily. Everything felt lived in. Yet no one answered when he called out. Hello? Nothing. Then he heard another sound. A television. He followed it into the living room. An old television sat in the corner, black and white, no channels, only static. Then the static cleared. The television showed Ashbury, busy, alive, people walking, children riding bicycles, traffic moving normally. David stared. It wasn't old footage. People on the screen carried today's newspaper. The same cloudy sky hung overhead. This was happening now. He stepped closer. The camera slowly moved through town, past the coffee shop, past the yellow house, past the police station. Then it stopped. The television now showed house 214. The camera zoomed toward the front porch. David watched himself walking toward the house. Exactly as he had done 10 minutes earlier, the camera followed him inside. Into the living room, he watched himself stand exactly where he was standing now. Then something changed. The version of David on television looked directly into the camera. The real David never had. The television David smiled, then turned toward the hallway. Someone spoke off-screen, softly. "You're early." Television David nodded, then followed the unseen voice into the darkness. The screen filled with static. David stood frozen. Behind him, the grandfather clock chimed once. He turned. The hands pointed to 10:13. They'd been moving only seconds ago. Then the front door slammed shut. The porch light outside switched off. The television clicked back on. Only one sentence appeared on the screen. ASHB, or IY, is now MTD. David ran to the front window. The town outside looked exactly as before, except his utility truck was gone. His footprints had vanished. Even the muddy shoe he had left at the police station was no longer there. His phone buzzed for the first time all morning. One message, unknown sender, "Thank you for replacing the last resident." The following Tuesday, a delivery driver entered Ashbury. The traffic lights still worked. The coffee was still warm. The television still played cartoons. House 214 still had its porch light on. And parked neatly outside the utility office was a white service truck. The company logo had faded, but the license plate was still readable. It belonged to David Collins. No missing person report was ever filed. According to company records, David had never been assigned to Ashbury. If you enjoy mysteries that leave more questions than answers, subscribe to 10-Minute Mysteries. And if you want another story where an ordinary system quietly traps people without anyone understanding why, watch the weather alerts started predicting disappearances next. Because sometimes the warning comes first, and sometimes you only realize you were part of the mystery after it's already over.